town of 19 York, and I'd like to introduce Verena Papik.
Hello,
and I have
everyone.
Carolyn Mosley. I have Purva Gupta. And I have Carolyn Pitt. All right, now I am so thrilled to have this panel, as my good friend said, because we don't have women having enough shine for what they're doing, how they impact industries, how they impact innovation. So as we mentioned before, there's a lot of origin stories here that go all over the world, start at a smaller place, go to a different place. And so I'd love for each of you to do that. And we'll start with you, Carolyn.
Pitt.
Pitt.
Okay.
That's right.
Awesome. Thanks, Elliott. Hi, I'm Carolyn Pitt. I'm the founder and CEO of Productions.com. We are a data-rich talent marketplace. And what we do is we serve over 50,000 film, TV, and brand content professionals. We are bridging the divide between human craft and machine intelligence so that producers can make sure they staff up for productions in hours rather than weeks. I'm a recovering IP and entertainment attorney, and I'm still a line producer at heart. And time is money, and what I know is that if you get the wrong folks on your staff or on your crew, you're definitely messing up the time and the money. And so that's what our platform does. Again, as a lawyer, I've got clients and friends in the industry, and for them, the inefficiencies that happen in production, in the brand marketing space, are simply untenable. And so for me, as someone that's lived the problem, not only as their counsel, but also somebody that's written creative content as well, this is something that was born out of my desire to have more efficiency and the ability to really have incredible people that you would have hired no matter where you're creating the content. And we're just the ones that are introducing you and saving the money and leveraging AI to do so.
That's fantastic. Purva, my favorite economist. Let's hear a bit about your origin story as well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Elliott. My name is Purva. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Lily AI. Lily is basically helping brands get found in AI search now, whether it's paid or on GEO, which is ChatGPT, or if it's your own website or a marketplace, wherever brands meet their consumers, human or agent, we are helping them get discovered by literally infusing the language of the consumer, the real words that we use as consumers, into all of their product content. So my origin story. I grew up in India. Like Elliott said, I'm an economist by training. I landed in New York as the first location where I was here in the US. And I was just realizing I'm not having a good shopping experience. Why do I keep returning stuff? And it feels like the words that I'm using to find stuff are landing on deaf ears. So like a merchant will call it midnight French terry athleisure. And I'm looking for a navy hoodie. And I can't find stuff because it's not called navy hoodie in the entire life cycle of that product. And so, but I wanted to make sure it's not an immigrant problem that I have. What if American women have figured out and I'm the only one that's not using the right words? And so I spoke to a lot of women about this, more than 1,000 women over 2 years, and I found out that there's a big gap in commerce, in how merchants describe product and how consumers describe product. And now you have the third wheel, the machines. And so that gap is what we set out to solve a decade back. So Lily is an AI native company. There's a difference between AI native and AI enabled. So this is what we have been doing for a while. And we work with some of the largest brands, including Abercrombie, Coach, Tory Burch, Hoka, among many others, who are successfully helping consumers find products. And so that's what we do.
All right, thank you. Carolyn Mosley.
Murphy. Murphy.
Murphy?
Yeah, let's go.
Talk about your origin story, knowing that you've been in consulting, you've been in sort of advertising, digital marketing, and now where you are now.
Yeah, great. Thank you for having me. So I'm Carolyn Murphy. I'm the GM of Springboards. I lead our business in the Americas, and our co-founder Amy Tucker couldn't be here today. She's back in Australia, where our business was founded. So I have the privilege of stepping in to represent kind of the founders here. But Springboards is an AI-enabled, AI-powered platform for strategists and creatives around the globe to help them unlock new insights, new inspiration, and new thinking when it comes to their marketing strategies. So there's plenty of tools out there on the execution side. We want to think about how can we leverage AI to unlock new creative ways in. If AI is built on the past, we want to be forward thinking. So we work with over 150 agencies around the globe who are leveraging our technology in their strategic workflows. And our origin story really as a business is Amy co-founded the business with her husband, Pitt. They are former agency strategists, and they lived in Australia and the US, and they founded Springboards a couple years ago. They moved back to Australia, and like many in our industry, unfortunately found themselves out of work strategists, and they started consulting. And Amy is a super great strategist, but she's always wanted to be a little bit, have that more of that creative thinking. And she was like, how can she and her husband, how can we leverage AI to take these ideas that we have and these insights we have, but take them to a more creative way, because we don't have the teams of agency partners working with them anymore. And they taught themselves how to code, and they started Springboards together. And really, it really came out of that need to help individuals who might not be as creative unlock this new creative thinking and leverage AI to drive more creativity in the industry, rather than there's a fear of it taking it away. And so really trying to harness what good it can do. And I found my way to Springboards very fortunately last year to drive our business in the US, having been really in the startup and marketing space for a really long time. So I love working at startups. And this is my first chance actually getting to work for a female founder, which I'm very grateful for. And no offense to all the wonderful gentlemen I worked for before, but there is a difference. There's absolutely a difference, and it's just it's top down and the approach to the company and all that. And yeah, I started my career in the sports world on the agency side, and then now here. So, but yeah.
Thank you.
That's it, yeah.
All right, Verena, you've been all over the world as part of your origin story, so I'd love to get it from college all the way to
Oh,
now.
man. How much time do we have? Yeah, I'm Verena Papik, the CEO and founder of Talkalytics. Talkalytics is an emotional intelligence engine. We're focusing on voice. So what does that mean? We understand how people are saying it and also what they mean. So you can say it's great or it's great, right? And so one of the use cases where our technology is being applied to is, for example, surveys. Now, you would be the first one to love surveys in the room if you're like, oh yeah, I love surveys. But that's the problem that we have, is that if you look at first-party data access that brands have right now, it is either surveys or focus groups. So we're essentially really redesigning the user experience of surveys in that sense through our voice-based interface. So that allows convenience for the participant, but it also allows just doing focus group kind of insights on scale for the brands. And we're generating I think you beautifully touched on this with, strategies and reports. We're generating insights and blind spots that we're identifying through what are people saying, which is, we have so much access to data. That's not the problem. The problem really is, what are we going to do with this data? And I have been like CMO in my life before, and I understand, like, you look at this pile of data and you're like, okay, great. What does this mean now for my marketing strategy? And this is where my kind of heart also goes into. And what led me onto this journey, and I know I kind of like started now where it's at, but what led me onto this journey is actually I got very disappointed in the sense of where this world is heading to. So my experience was, I'm from Austria originally, and I moved to China 15 years ago, and I happened to join as the first Western hire of what we call back then Musical.ly, which now is TikTok. Musical.ly, you're like, yeah. Were you a muser? Yeah. Yes? Oh, musers, I love it. Amazing. Yes, so, we scaled the company. I got hired as figuring out how could we even localize the product? Would it even work in other countries? Because music is such a local concept. And so I organically started in the German market and then ended up scaling the product to Europe, to creating the go-to-market from India to Latin America. Now, the rest is kind of history. We turned it into TikTok, sold it to ByteDance. And what I felt is, when kind of like lost its soul or had a disappointment, is there's a lot of like disgenuinity. And brands are started popping up with these social listening tools left and right. And I've been behind the scenes. I know what they're measuring, and it's not truth. It is the way social media is even designed and set up. It is to post your aspirational self, but not who you truly are. So how, as a brand, are you getting access to the actual thoughts of your customers? And this led me down this rabbit hole to really understand, how do we get the truth, right? And the first-party data and stuff like this. But yeah, it's been a wild ride.
I love that. I love that. Two of you have already brought it up here, and I'd like to kind of resurface it here in terms of making a differentiator for what is AI enabled and AI native, and actually what does that mean for your investors and for your consumers. So Purva, if you don't mind starting, and then we'll kind of move around the whole the group here.
Absolutely. I mean, as was said on one of the panels earlier, AI is not new to the world. Generative AI is. And so when I say AI native, it is all about how we have used AI over the years in the core offering itself, and which is discriminative AI and generative AI both. And so it's AI native from that perspective, from how we've just created the whole product, the whole solution, where because in our business and what we are doing, we're making sure that for a brand, all the product content in the old world or in the world today has been generated by a human, where you write the title, you write the description, and you just forget about it. We do not live in that world anymore, especially right now, because the biggest or the sharpest tool in a brand's toolkit today is its product content and how you show up, because you can't control the rest. Right. Which LLM picks you up, which ad picks you up, which ad platform picks you up, and what's happening in the content itself will get changed now as all of the big tech companies are using a lot of generative AI themselves. And so what's important in our space is all about how do we ensure that what the consumer cares about is appropriately put on the product content, which helps the brands differentiate. And so back to your question, for me, the biggest differentiator is in measurable and repeatable value. I think there's a lot. AI is like electricity. I want to know who is not using AI or who doesn't have it's like electricity. You don't even know sometimes that you're using a lot of AI, but you are. And so I think the conversation now, with so much investment in it, has to be around what kind of ROI or ROAS are you getting? It's just so important. And so I think for us as a company, the differentiator has been the measurable and repeatable impact from smallest and largest brands that we work with. And again, for our investors, it's that bet, it's that core bet. Lilly has now raised about $70 million in capital over the years, and it is backed on those core fundamentals.
Thank you. Verena, do you have I know you and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and so I'd love to hear your thought on it.
Yeah, and I think that is a great intro to the difference between AI enabled and AI native. And I think especially what investors are really caring about, and we have one in the room here. She might actually can talk about this, but I think what is really the importance as well in this world is to figure out how can you create, a data set that's valuable, that will also give very specific insights to the industry, to the product or anything that you're working on, that's giving you the competitive edge, but also at the same time enhances the customer experience because you become an expert. So OpenAI is good for various things, but if it is not giving you exactly the granular, expertise that you may need on scale, and so I think there is not only the investor interest that is to be covered, I think there is especially the customer first interest, because we're working with clients like UEFA or Meta, and it's very important that what we're delivering is really also interpreting the things really on the expertise of what we're selling, right? So I think you have the AI wrappers, but then there's also how can you make sure you're creating your own edge within this, because AI is so broad, right? And one other thing I wanted to add to it, and that's the conversation that we had, there's a difference between, we talk about AI, there's logical AI, and then there is the emotional AI. So the logical AI is really about the rational, kind of way we're currently using GPT. But the emotional AI is truly also understanding the human input. What is the person feeling when it's talking to me right now? And that's kind of like where Talkalytics comes in. Where I said one of our use cases is surveys, but at the end of the day, the industry right now is trying to make AI, is focusing on making AI more human, but we're focusing, we tackle AI from the other way around. We're focusing on understanding the humans through AI.
Can I? Oh, go. I was going to say, I completely agree. I think that we believe with this AI revolution in our industry that the human is so crucial, and and humans are the ones with taste. We're the ones with discernment, and especially in our industry where we know the most effective advertising is emotional advertising, and so you need that human element. And at Springboards, and you were talking about kind of giving the, making sure the data is super right and all that, and I think that's so important. And we sit on the upper funnel of that strategic thinking where you need lots of ideas and you need new thinking. And all these LLMs, ChatGPT, Gemini, and stuff, they're all built on the past.
Yeah.
And if we're going to drive creativity forward, if we're going to drive our industry forward, we need to think beyond the past. So we can't be building there are a lot of companies that are just wrappers on top of those tools, and they're just building off the past. And one of the things at Springboards is we're building for variation, because that's the differential. And like when you're talking about marketing strategy and brand strategy, you need that differentiator, and that's what we build, or you need that, and that's what we're building for with variation. And I would challenge you guys, you don't have to do it now, but if you did open up your favorite LLM, ChatGPT, OpenAI, Claude, Gemini, whatever it is, and you ask it to give you a random number, 0 to 10, all of you, maybe one won't, but pretty much everyone is going to get the number 7. And if you ask it again, you're going to get either number 3 or the number 4. And that's great when you need data, but like these LLMs are built on they're built on what's probable. They're built on probability. They're built on algorithms. And when it comes to our industry specifically, we need to think about what's possible, and you need to think about what's forward. So that's what we're trying to do at Springboards, and that's the differentiator. And talking about with investors and the conversations that we're having is it's not necessarily about giving you, in our use case, about giving you the right answer. We don't want to give you the answer. The human's going to have the answer. We're going to be the ones who are going to know. We want to give you lots of ideas and lots of inspirations that you can then pick from and say, oh, that's the nugget that I want to go down that path for. So just kind of, but just kind of the human element there and the data side.
Well, Carolyn, I know you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, thanks, Elliott and Carolyn. For Productions.com, it's really important that human focus remains. In the industry, there's a lot of discussion now, whether it's production or the creative industry, about the importance of having human touch, human insight, human storytelling and creativity, and whether or not that can or should be replaced by any machine learning. And for us, it's important that our clients understand and our job seekers understand that there's not a replacement. There will always be a human element. We are using AI at Productions.com to optimize and make things faster, more seamless, to make sure that the talent acquisition is reduced by 30 to 40%. Things that make sense that machines can do, but by no means replacing the human touch and the human insight, which is really critical to who we are as individuals. And that's throughout the organization and throughout the company, as well as the people that we work with, the brands that we work with. Everyone is excited about AI. No one wants to see humanity, overtaken or erased or in some way, detrimentally impacted by the fact that we have AI. And so it's important for us. And also in our industry, the production industry, you've got Sora, you've got a number of other tools that are now enabling you to make content faster, cheaper, less folks on the post-production side, or maybe even extras in the background. And so while that is a reality, it's not a replacement. How we message that, how we work with folks on the brand side as well, it's just really important. It's very nuanced. Not only that we talk about it, but that our business is fundamentally about the fact that this is a tool, one which we will work with to save time and money and to make sure that we're efficient, but by no means replacing creativity, which I think is key for people to know, to be comfortable with AI.
I love that, and I know that we've been already kind of hitting on it in terms of the aspect of humanity, and I'd love to kind of go back for something else that we talked about a little bit earlier, which is the homogenization, right? That is leveraged, so typically we talked about the LLMs, essentially, as you said, all of them could come up with a number 7 and a number 3 or 4. And so how do you, as founders, take, LLMs that have already been built and there's some homogenization, and then you put on your secret sauce that is your offering for your companies? And so I'd love you to talk about that as well. I'll start with you, Carolyn.
Okay. We hire really amazing, brilliant devs, I will say. We have some really, really brilliant developers on our team, PhDs in machine learning, who are just, they're absolutely fantastic. And so I will give them all the credit, I will say, on that. But I think it's what I said earlier, but it's about building for variation and being aware of that. I think that there's another element of educating the industry too about we know you said like AI is like electricity, which is true. We also throw the term AI around all the time right now, and it's kind of becoming the latest buzzword. Yeah, no, exactly. Yes, someone was telling me they wanted to create a AI bingo card for Can of like all the different AI terms and check them off throughout the week. But it's becoming a buzzword, so I think it also is important to define what we actually mean by it and how are we leveraging it. So that's why I liked how we started this conversation around that, because it is different and it has been around forever, like the actual technology. So I kind of skewed away from your question. I'm sorry, but just sparked the conversation.
Yeah, I can jump in here to say, like for example, I'm sure all of us know your AI is as good as your training data. So what Lily did, like when we started a decade back, we started creating our own data, and Silicon Valley gave me a lot of pain for it, saying that you're spending so much money in creating data. And I said, but that's what my non-technical mind says, that you need really good training data for really good output, and that is what is missing, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So there was a lot of discriminative AI that we used in that, where we taught the model with a lot of clean training data, and we made it understand only certain things because we needed it to be like that. And so my sort of segue into this is to say, like, you have to make sure that the ingredients that are required for the problem that you're solving, like it's not just about just using LLMs for everything. Right. In the space that we are in, where you're trying to understand what the consumer cares about, like why is it that the requirement for getting found out on all of these LLMs is basically, do you have clean data yourself? Because they can't create that. They can't produce that on its own. Like as a brand, you still have to do your job of making sure that you really put out good, clean data for the LLM to understand what is it that you offer. Otherwise, you will get left behind. So it's not that they can do everything and like this is just going to be like a complete homogenization. I don't think it's going to be like that. Like was mentioned earlier, there's a lot of vertical expertise that is required, and that is not going away. So AI is not going to take your job, but somebody else who knows how to use AI really well will take your job, right? Like this is a famous quote. I didn't say this, but a lot of other people are saying this, which is really true, that the whole paradigm has changed in how we work, where we have super tools at our access that are basically enabling us to do work differently and just make humans more superhumans almost.
That's right.
In this era that we live in now.
You hit on a great point there that I'd love to kind of jump on as well, is then transformation that happens for inside your organization that may have to change, right? We have new models of working, new governances, new workflows, and then outside, right, in the category that you're competing in, who you're dealing with. And so I'd love for all of you to kind of like weigh in there. I'll start with you, Carolyn, here, in terms of how the movie and production and entertainment industry is going to have to adjust because there's transformation that is happening because of AI and all those things.
Yeah, it's similar to what Purva just said, is learning how to work with the tools, because the tools aren't going away. So it's about upskilling so that you understand what tools are being used today, because next week it'll be different tools, and getting accustomed to working with what's coming down the pike instead of business as usual, because you can't turn the clock back. So I think it's about taking away the fear. You know, one of the ways that we help people get more comfortable with the concept of AI, years ago in law school, I learned about this Betamax case. And years ago, when the VCR was dropping, I don't know if anybody remembers the VCR, there was a lot of fear out there. The major studios thought, oh no, this is going to take away financially from our returns. We can't allow this to happen. So there's a Supreme Court case. And ultimately, if we fast forward, we all now know that when you have the opportunity to watch things on, nobody uses VHS, but DVD and streaming, and now it's just multiple streams of revenue and opportunities that didn't take away from the studios. It actually multiplied and gave more opportunity and more of a landscape for them to generate revenue. That's the way in which we have to start thinking about AI and other tools that are coming down the pike. The next AI, whatever that will be, is that you can't stop it. You have to learn how to be fluid enough to work with it and can be the one or ones who know how to leverage it for good rather than evil.
Yep.
Otherwise, the wave will sort of leave without you.
Are you seeing an impact inside your organizations as well? So Purva, you've been doing this for 10 years, and so how are you seeing even that workflow change inside your own organization?
Absolutely. I mean, like she said, there's no going back, right? Like to how we used to work, what we used to do. There's only going to be more and more tools that will be at our access. And so I think I'll say two things there because I want to also talk about this other point. More than half of my organization is female. More than half of my board is female. More than half of my leadership team is female, and that's by design. It's really important to make sure that we are intentional about some of these things because that diverse perspective will be really, really, really important in this new future because you'll have access to a lot of tools.
Right.
So ideas will matter, how you go about them will matter, and so you need that diversity.
Right.
So that's one. And number two, like, of course, there is just a lot that is changing. And so you need to set up that culture of how does work happen now? And like, I'm going to reference the Shopify CEO talking about before you hire, see what AI can do for you. We do have that policy too. There's so much that is possible. So you have to really define what do you need AI for and like what AI can do for you already today. And it's not that Lilly is hiring any less. That is not the point. I absolutely have a lot of roles I'm hiring for. But it's just when we are interviewing people, we're just looking for different things and just stressing on different things that are skill sets of the future that are just required today.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you both have shared because I think what's unfortunate that we're seeing in our industry right now is, especially with some of the holding companies, which I won't call out, but where they're seeing that, especially when it comes to media and media planning, that there's a lot of layoffs, and they're saying, oh, we're investing in AI, but then you also see the layoffs on the other side, and that's not what we need to happen. We need to be ingesting these new tools into our workflow, but empowering the individuals who are still doing the work and who know the best practices and who have that critical thinking and who know what good is in our industry. We need to keep them the ones driving it. And so I always say, like, you could give anyone a Ferrari, right? And they'll get it from point A to point B. But if you put an F1 driver in it, they're going to really know how to drive that car. And that's kind of how I feel about some of these AI tools with our industry. Is we can give it, but we need to make sure that we're giving it to the right people. And when you're putting the right people into kind of the driver's seat who are leveraging these tools. And I think we as a business, we're a small company. We're about 25 globally. Started in a small beach town in Australia called Noosa. We've got a team in Sydney and Melbourne and New York and London. Our finance person is in Milan. Like, we are all over the place. And so I do think that internally also leveraging AI on workflows, how can we leverage it from an internal ops perspective is super key. And I think that's really important. But then, so what I said earlier, I think externally there's this element of educating the industry. I think there's a lot that still needs to happen in some ways of how we're using it, knowing what platforms are good for what, and rather than just turning to ChatGPT and using it for everything, maybe it's not the best tool. Maybe there's another tool that's better for what you're working on. So yeah, but I think that's what I'd add there.
I'd like to bring in actually, this is a great internal, with workflows within the company perspective. I'd like to bring the customer perspective, which is just what I'm personally burning for. And we see, there's currently a lot of ways how, including us, how brands could apply AI to actually come closer to the actual customer, right? How can you use it for the benefit of actually being close, be where they are at? So for example, for us, over 70% of Gen Z is already preferring talking over typing. And then we don't even know the data of Gen Alpha yet. So I feel like there is also a responsibility to meet people where they're at in order to not be left behind. But there are and it takes a lot of industry education. There are some decision makers and shareholders that are just not wrapping their head around how fast they should move in order to keep it up, because it doesn't matter how improved your internal workflows are if already the general customer is moving so fast with the way they're engaging on their daily lives with the tools they have available. Then it's going to be the underdog brands that are going to take away your business. Let's say you're, a Procter and Gamble. It was like all these mini, startups are coming left and right because they actually do speak to their audience and they understand where they're at and they understand how they want to be, their websites or technologies want to be used for. And so there is, I feel like also some probably like policies or things that are right now just also slowing down the process, regardless if you're going to use the tools internally or externally. But I feel there's a lot of there needs to be like some boot camps or something to be held.
I want to double down on one thing
Sure.
that Verena is saying. This revolution is actually led by the consumer. This is not like
exactly.
retail media type of a situation where the big tech is pushing it.
Yes,
this
exactly.
is like 0 to 100 million users per week for OpenAI happened in 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a whole different paradigm of how quickly the consumer is saying, I want this by noon Saturday. That's how fast the consumer is adopting and moving. There is no time for brands or enterprises to sit on the sidelines and say, we'll see how it's going and then we will decide.
Right.
You have already missed the bus, my friend.
Yeah.
That's what you're thinking, because the consumer is ready and asking for so much more and everybody has to catch up.
Right.
And what's happening because of that is that the investors are responding, and that's why you're seeing so much money. Over 70% of the investor dollars are going to companies that are either AI native or AI enabled, which is making it interesting for them to sort of weed through and figure out which ones truly are using AI, and then in which capacities, and which ones are really effective, which ones are the consumers, actually leveraging and converting, so that they can know which things are actually fun. But it's interesting. One thing I'll also say is, as women founders, oftentimes we have access to fewer resources, especially early on.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, it's the elephant in the room,
Yeah.
right? And AI actually enables us to level the playing field somewhat there as well, because of the ways in which we can advance with the tools. But go ahead, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, it's sad that most of the money that we're talking about, so last year the stat was 1% went to female founders, and I had a little bit of role to play in that of the capital that Lilly raised last year, but I feel just that is so depressing.
Well, Carolyn, you testified in front of Congress about that as well.
I did, yeah.
Wow.
And the thing about it is, it's, yes, female founders, it's also underrepresented founders, so founders of color, and specifically Black women founders. Our intersectionality means that 0.034% annually of funding goes to brilliant founders that should have access to funds as well. And so AI, yes, can help to level the playing field, and investors investing in other founders that they're not pattern matching. That's my PSA for the day. Also makes a difference in having companies come to life that truly are innovative and changing the game.
One of the things that you guys just made me think about as well is then, what are the signals that you as founders have to see when you decide between pilot and scaling, right? Whether it's a feature set, a capability, or those things, what do you have to see to say, okay, yes, we need to invest more, do more here in this area?
Something quick for me is definitely how are they responding. So
Okay.
when we're testing in market and also doing focus groups and other qualitative ways of finding out what is it that our customers looking for, that for us means we've got to triple down. We actually have a beta of our production planner, which is AI powered, coming out later this year, and it's synthesizing not just our global talent base, but also other production resources that are geolocated, that are synthesized with the AI that we're excited to drop, and that is very largely due to the impact from hearing the customer that's something that they don't have or that they need more of.
I was going to echo the customer. It's number one. It's hearing from the customer of what are the challenges, what are they tackling every day. When they do turn to our platform, where do they see opportunity that could improve their workflows. And I think, but it's remembering to be in market. It's remembering to talk. I heard someone earlier today, you got to remember to touch grass. And maybe it's the strategist back in me as well. Of you got to be a strategist, can't sit behind a computer. You've got to be in there. You got to touch grass. You got to be living, and you got to be communicating. We can't be building these tools and innovating on them in our own little silos over here. You've got to be talking to people, coming to things like this where you can learn from others as well and hear. And I think that's what's super important.
Yeah, right. I agree. I agree with everything. I think for us, one of our most I would say important messages as we bring across the brands is, you see the usage of compared, let's say, for example, our survey link compared to a SurveyMonkey link, we have a 30% higher participation rate. It's clearly obviously the customer wants to use it or is more likely to use it. Surveys suck already and you're annoying already. Like, just make it a bit more convenient, right? And that is for us, like, you know, figuring out how can we elevate the experience and just make it better. And, you know, when you have that data, and you don't even need it on big scale, but you go and collect this data from the actual end customer, because at the end of the day, we're selling B2B, but B2B goes B2C at the end of the day. So you want to go to the actual end of the chain and then prove and show the data from there.
I actually just completed a survey earlier today that I never complete them, but I had such a horrible travel experience getting to Cannes this year on an airline that I won't name.
Yeah.
But they actually, I think because it was a survey, like if I was able to give them feedback,
Yeah.
I think they would have heard a lot.
Well,
more.
that's
And I
another-
never complain about that stuff, but it was just this,
And that is
it was
exactly another
so I
problem,
was like, but so
because-
they just got my vote, like that was terrible,
Yeah.
that was terrible. But if they had heard I could have
Yeah.
given like a nice voice note.
Yes,
And,
yeah. And imagine that's the problem. Like, the only time, I'm guilty of that as well, the only time I give feedback is when I'm really, really angry.
Yeah.
So their data they have is just like, it's not, and I feel bad for, everyone involved in providing the service, because probably the touch points all around were okay,
Right.
but you never get like a genuine picture of the whole
You're not gonna fill
experience,
out the
because the
open text
people
box.
that were fine just don't say anything. So it's like, where do we even
We
stand?
make it hard for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love what you're doing. So just an anecdote.
I'll take it to another level, because that's something that we do at Lilly, which is we will actually guarantee the metric that they care about in the contract.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
They can walk away if they do not hit it. Because that's the space, at least we are in, of how hungry the words of the consumer are in commerce, that we will literally guarantee 100% of our customers are with us because we guaranteed the metric that they care about. In most cases, it is revenue, which is fair. If the consumer gave them their money, then hopefully everybody is happy.
Did you always have
And
that philosophy, or you grew into it as an organization?
We've actually always had that philosophy.
Okay.
Especially because it definitely started with, back then, 6 years back when Lilly started its enterprise business, we were early to the market. And I had to convince brands to say, listen, you are calling it midnight French terry athleisure, but the consumer is calling it navy hoodie. There is a problem. Let me fix that problem for you. And people will be like, no, but our creative team wants to call it exactly that. I'm like, you don't want money?
you want to sell
I had to convince them. So it started with that. But I think over time, we have literally made that into a policy to make sure that people understand. Like, you have to, in AI today, there's a lot of experimental ERR is what they call it. Because, of course, everybody has to try. Of course, people have to get a head start. So there's a lot going on. But like, what's measurable, what's repeatable, what's sustainable, and truly what's exponential. So what I'm talking about in what we are seeing in our space is like 10-20% lifts in revenue from what you spend on Google.
That's incredible.
It's like a whole another level, but that's what true AI should give you. Especially with generative AI, you should be able to do that. And that's something that folks have to find out as they try.
Yeah. I'd love to ask, what real insight and strategic advantage are we using the data that we collect for? Is it then to get closer to the customer for more share of wallet? Is it all of those things? It sounds like there are some things that we've talked about in terms of radical customer centricity. And so I'd love to kind of get some thoughts from you guys on that.
For us, it's definitely understanding. It's a two-sided marketplace. So it's understanding what really is key for the job seeker, including their career aspirations. Oftentimes, folks want to shift what they're doing. And then for the brands, what is it that the brands need more of and why, so that we can best meet that? And so for us, it's about getting all those data points so that we can really differentiate from what else is in the marketplace.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I've said it a lot, but I'm going to just keep it short with this one. My business is all about customer centricity. It's all about the literal words that consumers use. We're infusing that into commerce. And now, literally, wherever they are meeting the brand, if it's ads, if it's social, if it's their website, wherever it is, we are making sure that that's what we are doing. And then the last thing I'll say is, there's a lot of talk about, like, you can get the learnings, you can get the analysis, but especially in commerce, there are very less solutions which actually do all of the work not just give you the insight, but actually execute it. And now it has to be that closed loop because it's always on. There's about 14 billion plus searches happening every single day. So that words, the words that consumers are using are just changing everywhere. I mean, the words, like, as you know, the average search query has gone to 23 words now. It used to be 4 words. So we just live in a whole different world now where there is a lot of context, a lot more context that we are all throwing and asking the experience to serve back. And so for Lily, it's been really helpful to just focus on the consumer from the very beginning to say, how do I solve the problem end to end? I'm not from retail. I was not from retail 10 years back, not from fashion, not from tech. And that helped me just think through the problem as a consumer to say, no, I want this problem solved. I don't care what tech it takes, what is possible and not, what retail thinks about it. I just want to solve the consumer problem.
And I think at Springboards, I love that you're so consumer-centric and stuff. And as a B2B, where majority of our partners are agencies, and agencies are in the business of winning and retaining clients, and creating great work as well. But money talks, right? And so for us, it's really about how can we enable our agency partners to move through their processes more effectively, help them win new business. And that was actually one of the original challenges that we set out to. There's so much money wasted on agencies trying to win business. I was talking to one partner, they spent $1 million just on travel to try to win a brand.
Wow.
Just their travel budget was $1 million. And then that doesn't go into all the manpower and woman power and person power used to actually do the work to try to win that business. That was just the travel. So there's so much money being thrown into the pitching process. Can we help that? Can we help in a little way move through that a little bit faster, help them save money, and give time back to people to think, right? Agencies hire brilliant folks. Brands hire agencies for the people. It's the people who are coming up with the ideas. It's the people who can unlock those insights. They're hiring these, they're hiring these great partners because of that reason. It's the people really. And so we're in the people business. I mean, yes, it's AI, but that's really what it is about. It's how can we help elevate your team so that we can get back to doing what they're really good at, is saying that's a good idea. This is the spark that I needed to then bring this to the next level. And that's really, I think that's what it is. So for us, it's making sure that we're empowering agencies, giving them solutions where they can spend money in really the right ways too, and in that way too. And then in turn, if they say, hey, we were able to win this pitch because we had an insight that came from Springboards that we wouldn't have unlocked otherwise, like that's the win for us. Yeah.
I know one of the things we talked about recently was focusing the commoditization of execution over commoditizing creativity.
Yeah.
And I'd love you guys to kind of hit on that for a second.
Yeah, that's exactly where we lie at Springboards, right? As we are not on the execution front. There are so many tools, and the AI is evolving every day, as we kind of touched on being able to create these really incredible videos at the click of a button, or here's my logo, give me 15 TikToks, and there's so much technology around that now, which is great. But what we need to remember is that the best, like what I said at the beginning, is the best creative comes from humans. It comes from people who feel, who are talking to others, who are touching grass and communicating and know what's happening in the world. So for us, really, that creativity it really lies with the people. But how can we leverage this new technology? How can we leverage generative AI? Or it's not generative AI is new. How can we leverage generative AI to unlock new creative ways in? Okay, I have this insight, but now here's my audience information, how can I reach them in a new way that's different than what anyone else has done before? Because that's really what we're trying to do. And I think that there's a lot of commoditization on the execution side, and pretty soon, there's just so much out there. But I think what we need to think about is on the strategic side, and how do we even get to that point? We don't want to have AI that's just, your next ad is just, I put this insight in, and then the AI creates the ad. Like it's not going to be winning a lion if you do that. Like it's gonna, we need to be keeping humans and keeping the real creativity there.
I'll just add very quickly on top of that. Same thing for Productions.com. And for us, it's about recognizing that humans, we're great at empathy and strategy and the humanity piece. And the goal is to allow the execution to be commoditized so that there's more time and space for those things and other things.
Yeah.
So that's our position.
There's a great quote that says, "Shit that arrives at the speed of light is still shit." And I think it was an advertising someone, but like that, and I think that's true. And especially when we're talking about leveraging AI for creativity, as many will be doing this week in Cannes, is if you're not spending the time to actually think through it, like you said, Carolyn, like that's what we need to be doing. That's what we need to be prioritizing, is how can we leverage this technology that we're giving time back for people to do the fun part of their job. You know, that the fun part of their job is really trying to come up with that unlock. So okay, I completely agree.
What I would like to add on this is I'm bringing another layer onto this. So what Talkalytics does is essentially we are aiding the, like if you look at, we're going very deep in terms of like what even makes a brand. And so everything that we're talking about on the execution, on the creativity side, everything is getting executed somewhere. It's for something. It's going to end somewhere, right? If it's going to end to a client, it's going to end to a consumer. And so at the end of the day, though, if we don't understand how to even measure the execution and what is even the point of brands and execution and what is even the core of the marketing is the emotional closeness of your customers. The reason why the variety of brands are even existing is because a Mercedes makes me different feel than a Ferrari, for example. This is why we have so many options out there, because I am personally, as a customer, resonating with the product, with the offer, with the positioning, and it emotionally makes me feel something. This is why I am a consumer in the first place of that specific product, because quite frankly, we probably don't need 98% out of the options that are out there, right? A cream is a cream, like at the end of the day. So I think with the emotional closeness and measuring and understanding how your brand is performing, and a brand always has a brand promise as well, and there goes a brand trust. So now you do need to understand, let's say Coca-Cola is one of my favorite examples. So Coca-Cola is promising happiness. So how does Coca-Cola right now measure? Does Coca-Cola actually make the people happy? How do they feel about Coca-Cola? And if you don't understand actually as a brand where you stand and are all the marketing campaigns and all of this expensive agency stuff you're doing, is it also actually working? Does it stick? Does it create that emotion to the people? So then if you know where your emotion stands, and let's say, joyful, but you still need to figure out how to move the needle to happiness. And so this is where we come in and we're bringing in this emotional layer to say, okay, listen, this is the input we're getting. This is how people are feeling about you. This is the sentiment. And we identify over 45 different vocal expressions, from joyful, desperation, bored, awkward, whatever it is, to give you also the emotional compass. So then over the time, you're able to actually move the needle and measure throughout all the marketing activities and campaigns and everything you're doing. Are you moving from joyful to excitement, to eventually to happiness? Like, where are you in this world? And I feel that is where you can, we have the creative part, we have the executional part, and then we have the, how is it even landing, and how do you measure that, right? So it's kind of like the whole brand message circle.
Right. Well, I really appreciate this conversation. I think one of the driving things that I've heard today here is really around how we can leverage AI for humanity, right? So whether it's we're supporting things that are happening on humanity to make you better at what you're doing, or you're leveraging the insights from humanity to actually make us a little bit more sharper in our execution. So I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you.